Hey guys, welcome back to the Cult of Man. I'm Kyle, and that's Justin, aka Night Patrol. And today we have a film I can't believe we haven't discussed yet because this is, I think, well, it for sure is in my top three of all time, but it might be my favorite film of all time. We are discussing 1982's Blade Runner, directed by the great Ridley Scott, starring Harrison Ford, and who else do we have here? Rutger Hauer, Sean Young, Edward James Olmos. Just an incredible cast. And yeah, this is where really modern cyberpunk as an aesthetic, as a movement, really started. And yeah, you got your first delve into this, my man. I'm curious. I've been watching this movie for probably 20 years. The original theatrical cut and the director intended final cut, which is the version everyone should watch, everyone should see, because it's what Ridley Scott intended to hit the theaters until the studio had other plans. But my man, what did you think?
Oh, dude, it's so funny. I actually haven't watched Blade Runner in such a long time, but um, number one, you never forget the imagery. You never forget some of the one-liners, some of the quotes that come out of it. Um, it's crazy going back to watching Blade Runner after seeing so many things. I love science fiction, like hard science fiction and all that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's great to come back to Blade Runner and Blade Runner's take on science fiction and how it was pretty much the cradle of the cyberpunk genre. And it's a great noir film. It's a great science
Mm-hmm.
fiction, and it has everything in there. It has everything about a storyline that has a commentary on life and creation, freedom. You have that blended in there with the dystopian society that's kind
Mm-hmm.
of like living kind of in what seems like um a post World War III setting,
Right.
and how things are kind of advancing, yet at the same time things are kind of staying the same. Like you could probably take the futurism out of it, and it could be seen as something that could be taking place in like the Great Depression, because it's
Mm-hmm.
you have like a you know um, mystery to it. There's a epic mystery involved, and you have Blade Runner's pretty much trying to you know he's supposed to find and exterminate certain, you know, um, replicant beings, or, I guess you could say, rebel servants.
Right,
you know,
right, right.
and you have such a blend of different types of characters, um, in an unfamiliar setting, but at the same time also still very familiar, and yeah, I mean, I can go on and on. I can ramble a bit, but from what I could tell, I love this movie. I always have loved the movie, and it's so great to kind of come back and watch it again, having seen a lot of other stories over the years, because I haven't seen it in a while, but it was just like coming back to it and kind of like cross analyzing Blade Runner with a lot of other movies. You know right away that a lot of other science fiction films, or even cyberpunk genre based media is heavily influenced and inspired by a Blade Runner, without a doubt.
Mhm. Yeah, it's Blade Runner is one of those movies that obviously I grew up with the theatrical version that has the voiceover narration from Harrison Ford,
Yeah.
which was added later by the studio. And so when the um, the final cut became available, I think in 2007, I remember hearing about it, and like the day it dropped, I remember running to the store and buying that DVD and
Mm,
just being so blown away by just the minor changes. One, no narration, no voiceover. And the studio added that because they felt because it Blade Runner, before it's a science fiction film, is a true detective noir film. It's in
yeah.
the vein of the old detective noir films of the 30s and 40s and even 50s. And so they felt that should have been there.
Yeah.
Not Ridley's intention, at all. And so to see it as he intended, even going back and seeing some of the corrections, technical corrections that he made was just, it was so beautiful. And again, that was '07. So, since then I've watched the film, but I've really only watched the final cut. I did buy a bundle on Apple TV, and the bundle is the final cut, the theatrical cut, and then the sequel 2049. And so I rewatched the theatrical cut maybe one time, and I really don't have a problem with it. There's a lot of fans that sort of retroactively have decided to hate it because of the perceived incongruities in it. And I'm just like, guys, we all enjoyed this movie growing up. We had no problem with it being sunny at the end. We had no problem with him, and that. For those that haven't seen it, I don't want to spoil too much, but an ending where you're not in the city anymore and it's bright and sunny. None of us had a problem with any of that until we saw the final cut, and then sort of have decided to become snobs about it. I still think it's beautiful. I still think, because it's what most people saw, and it is the version that did create the cult following. And obviously, the final cut is what Ridley intended. It is the superior cut. And it is perfect, and it is what everyone, I think, should watch. If you've never seen Blade Runner, I do highly recommend you watch it.
It's without a doubt. It's definitely a must watch movie. Must watch science fiction movie.
Yes.
Must watch for cyberpunk. A must watch for cinema in general. There's so many things. I would say there's so many things to take away from watching this movie. I feel like I don't think there'd be anyone that would probably want to, scoff or look down on it at this point. I don't think anyone that knows.
And that's so interesting because a lot of us, again, for guys like you and I, we would discover these movies either on cable as kids, or we would discover them, at Blockbuster as kids, and we just rent these things and we would just have a reaction to them. We didn't have a whole bunch of people online barking at us, telling us what was good, what was bad. We just had a pure experience for things like Blade Runner and tons of other movies, and we either liked it or we didn't. And I kind of miss that. I think that there's a fair amount there's so much research you can do on films now, that by searching them, Googling them, Binging them, whatever it is you do, that you're gonna get commentary. And I tell, when I recommend films to people, whether it's Blade Runner or other things that they haven't seen, I tell them, look, don't even look up the trailer. Don't go online. Just go in. Go in. Yeah, go in fresh. Go in fresh, and then you have the reaction to the art that you have. Go in without somebody chiming in your ear. Oh, so and so, I don't like so and so's acting or whatever. Because what's beautiful about Blade Runner, is the fact that it is the masterpiece it is because it is objectively an absolute piece of just superior cinema. That at the time, which it's crazy, it was critically panned when it came out. It didn't make money when it came out. I don't think it was. It left theaters relatively early. People were really they didn't know how to react to it. Some people did. There was a fair amount of people that watched it that got it immediately, that understood what Ridley and company were doing, and those people just did. That they got it, and those people were right. But it is interesting that you take a movie like Blade Runner, you take a movie like John Carpenter's The Thing, these movies that, when you and I saw them on VHS from Blockbuster or on cable, we're just sitting there and our minds are blown by the effects, the acting, the cinematography. And obviously we're not thinking about that stuff as kids. We're just enjoying a really great movie. And now that we're older, we can, I can sit there and it's like, wow, the cinematography in this film is incredible. It's a dystopic. Blade Runner does what a lot of dystopic films seem to have forgotten. Blade Runner made dystopia beautiful. Not saying that it made, it's clearly an authoritarian world that we're dealing with, and we're not in any way cheering for that at all. But there isn't a single frame of this film, including some of the kills, some of the rougher parts of future Los Angeles, that aren't incredibly beautiful. The cinematography, the set design, Ridley's direction, his choice in actors. This is truly, and I don't say this about a lot of, there's tons of movies that I love, but Blade Runner is up there with Jaws. It's up there with Casablanca. It is an absolutely flawless film. And I don't, I don't, there's a lot of stuff that I like that you could consider schlock, that you consider a B movie or an exploitation movie that I love and um, I'm ride or die for. But Blade Runner is a film that it is flawless. It is perfect. You don't have to be a sci-fi fan to enjoy this movie because it's just a great film. You don't have to be a genre guy like you and me. And I think that's partly why this movie works so well is I don't even have to pay attention too much to the background politics of future LA in Blade Runner. It's important to have those details. We want to know, why are these replicants so upset? Why are they doing what they're doing? Why is Harrison Ford's character, why is Deckard doing what he's doing? I don't have to go too deep in it because it's just a compelling drama and it's beautiful to look at. So good.
Yeah, without a doubt. There's so many layers to the film, and I think that's what I think that's one of the things that keep like film buffs coming back to it. Not just so much for the for the science fiction or for the even for the special effects. I feel like honestly, special effects is usually kind of like one of the biggest staples in cinema, especially in the '80s. Like it just holds up so well. So
quick
so
note
far
on the
its time.
special effects. It's the last analog science fiction film. This movie was not done in any way with digital effects. It was the last analog science fiction film, which is even more impressive.
Yeah, it really is. Especially looking at the final cut and seeing how you see some of the buildings, like the Tyrell Company buildings.
Mm-hmm.
Um, a lot of those shots, for analog is really impressive. Like,
Yeah.
watching it, VHS theatrical, back in the day, um, it was very interesting to see that stuff. But at the same time, you have a lot of shots that are very dark, so it's kind of hard
Right.
to really see everything, see all the
Right.
details.
Right.
Like looking at the final cut, you really see all those smaller details, and there's so much going on in a lot of those like rolling shots or those shots, where you're basically just kind of like moving towards buildings or moving around buildings. You have that point of view where you're in those little hover cars, just kind of like flying either towards buildings, past buildings, around them, and
Mm-hmm.
you just get especially if you're like, imagine watching it in a theater, the
Oh,
scale,
yeah.
it's jaw dropping. There's some very jaw dropping visuals, and for them to be analog, is extremely impressive.
There was a limited release of Blade Runner: The Final Cut and this was 2019. It was 2019 because the film is set in 2019 LA, and they were playing it. Was it the Ace Theater downtown Los Angeles? And something I actually I booked a gig and there was no way I could have made it, but it would have been so awesome to see the final cut on the big screen. And if it ever comes back, man, we are there.
Yeah.
But to your point, all the things that you didn't see because of the lower resolution VHS as a kid, the lower resolution on cable TV in the 90s, the stuff that just you weren't going to notice, and now and some films don't work this way. It's amazing that a film that was so heavy in models and miniatures looks as good in high definition, that looks so good in 4K as it does, because there's a fair amount of films frankly I prefer seeing as a VHS rip. I recently rewatched it was is it Day of the Dead, 1985. It was the third. So you had Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, and then Day of the Dead, 1985. I watched it on Tubi, and the version they had on Tubi was clearly a VHS rip. It actually was more fun to watch because it felt like I was a kid again, watching it on local TV on like Channel 50 in Chicago, Channel 66. You know what I mean? Channel 26. On the weekends they just rerun old movies.
Yep.
And So that can be fun. It's, I've seen older films that maybe that had no idea we were going to get this, 4K and HD this, and some of them, it's like, ooh, they don't look as good. And Blade Runner is not one of those films. Again, it goes to the incredible craftsmanship that went into this movie. Whether we always laud the director, but all the people who built the sets and built the vehicles, and down to just little details you'll see on like a character's costume or like in their eye or how their hair is done. It's so beautiful to watch.
Yeah.
What is fun for me is I'll revisit. I've actually started. I'd watch this movie every day if I could, and obviously, the reason I don't is because I don't want to become immune to it. It's like a beautiful painting. I could look at certain paintings, I could look at certain pieces of art every single day, but you don't want to become immune to it. You want to have that sense of awe. So I've sort of put myself on a probation with Blade Runner that it's like, okay, because when we were in lockdowns and all I was doing was studying film, studying cinematography, studying shots, angles, all of that. And there was so much in Blade Runner to absorb that I studied the hell out of it. And I started to get immune to it. I'm like, I got to stop. So I'm trying to give myself like a 2-year reprieve in between viewings. One of the things I've noticed, especially in this recent, you and I have rewatched this, is now when I watch something like Bubblegum Crisis, I watch something like Wicked City, I watch something like Goku Midnight Eye. Especially Bubblegum Crisis, the original OVAs, and Goku Midnight Eye.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if there are two other pieces of cinematic art that were more influenced by Blade Runner, and like down to in Bubblegum Crisis, literally the AD police headquarters is the exact same design as police headquarters in Blade Runner 1982. Little bits like that. The concept of the boomers in Bubblegum Crisis are clearly replicants. It's like they just kept going with it, which makes watching Bubblegum Crisis even more fun. I think that's maybe why we got such a response on our reviewing Goku Midnight Eye, because it's so pure. It's so close to that original concept of cyberpunk that Blade Runner gave us. And there's just such an appetite for stuff that out there still. It's really impressive. But the Japanese, I don't know that the US ran with it until later, until it became cool to like it. Did we start to revisit the aesthetics of the original Blade Runner? The Japanese, though, dude, they grabbed that ball and they ran for it, and I love it.
Yeah, that's definitely what the Japanese were good for doing. They took a lot of ideas that either were or were not pop culture for the US that they were able to use. They use they made animation marketable with their
Yeah.
style and their storytelling. And at their time, with basically they have a much wider range of they're able to do more animation than
Mm-hmm.
what us Americans or people in the West can do with film. And of course in the heyday in the 80s, they definitely accomplished a lot with a lot of visionary stories and animation. So you think about the stuff that came out of it. I think with America, a lot of it just kind of comes down to like what's marketable, what's profitable, things like that. And I think at the time for the 80s, science fiction, I don't think was really still science fiction struggled for a long time to really be
Yes.
part of pop culture.
Yes.
Honestly, it's like the 60s, Star Trek, Gene Roddenberry made science fiction famous with Star Trek. A few years later, George Lucas did his thing with Star Wars.
Right.
And I think for a time that was kind of what science fiction was just kind of, whittled down
Right.
to probably just those two franchises.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the rest of it just kind of came down to, what, film companies could, have the next big thing that they could turn into a franchise or something that could make money and things like that. And it probably
even in the 80s and 90s,
there's still a lot of great stuff.
There were select. They didn't have the franchise-itis that they have today.
Yeah.
Because there were so many great movies that never got the franchise treatment. But to your point,
Yeah.
there wasn't an understanding or recognition. Like I mean, I remember in the 90s, I remember even through the 2000s, geek culture, marketable, profitable geek culture, like San Diego Comic-Con, as most people know it today, was not that. I remember being a little kid. I remember being 8. I remember being 12. I remember being 17 and going to cons in Chicago. And it really just being, it was just a bunch of vendors that either had comic book shops, had collectible shops, had like video stores. You have like the occasional, what they would probably consider has-been actors at the time that were really well known for doing sci-fi series, sci-fi TV shows, movies, horror series, that would be there to talk about the shows, sign autographs. And it was so insular. It was when geek, when nerd, when otaku, when weeb wasn't cool at all. And
Right.
it was
Yeah.
we were really a stigmatized subculture. The movie Otaku no Video that was released by Animego, which is getting re-released, by the way.
Oh,
They're going to
really?
press a new Blu-ray.
Oh,
God
that's
bless.
gonna be good,
Oh
man.
yeah, no,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
That's honestly that was a really good like OVA. I only caught that kind of like during the Hulu era, like when Hulu first
Sure.
came about. I caught a talking to a video at that point, but it was really good and it's really
It,
funny.
it it nails what con culture was up until it
Yeah,
became this, and
yeah,
until Marvel and Disney figured out a way to take these stories seriously and give them the big budget treatment. It wasn't a big deal, and so we have to keep that in mind when and it's the only thing that really explains why you could have a movie like Blade Runner, you could have a movie like The Thing, you could have these movies that were dropping in the 80s and even 90s, and it's just like, okay, we know all of these movies as, oh yeah, they are benchmark master class films for writing, directing, cinematography, set design, all of these things. But at the time, man, it was no, that people didn't get it. I think it was a generational thing. There were people of those generations reviewing those movies that did like them, but they were few and far between. And like horror and science fiction now, frankly, where our industry is right now, if you want to get something funded, you want to get something made, your best bet is it better be horror or sci-fi slash superhero. That's kind of the way it is. You can do horror, especially, and depending on the type of sci-fi story you're doing, you can do it for very low budget. You can make, Blumhouse, for example, they've had a system where, for 15 years, they would make movies for $5 million, and all those movies would make back 70, 80, $90 billion, and they're making money hand over fist. But it's purely genre. Now, and when I say purely genre, that's what outsiders see it as. Those of us that understand actually know this is the most fertile creative genre that you can play in, because movies like Megan, movies like Friday the 13th, movies like Alien, those are all horror films, but they're so different. It's something that works, and sci-fi for the most part too. I know that Blade Runner wasn't exactly a low budget film, but it really was a genre film. We came around, we figured out just how great it was, and it just how it continues to influence. Like I don't. It's interesting to me that I'm trying to think what out there outside of maybe Westworld, what out there picked up that ball and ran with it. Obviously, the Japanese, we know, Goku Midnight Eye, Bubblegum Crisis. There are AD Police. There are anime out there that picked up that ball and ran with it. I don't know what's going on today necessarily. We did get Blade Runner 2049, which I thought was a really worthy follow-up, extremely well done. It kept the soul of it and extrapolated more ideas. You have, obviously, The Matrix has a touch of that for sure. But I'm trying to think what out there right now. The only thing that's coming into my mind right now was the Four Seasons of Westworld we got from HBO, which I loved. I know not everybody enjoyed it, but because it was a slow burn for parts of it, but I think it was super, super smart, really sophisticated. Maybe that's why it didn't do as well. But there's still, for the love that a movie like Blade Runner gets, I'm so surprised that there isn't more done with what it gave us. Does that make sense?
Everything you said totally made sense, and you mentioned Alien, which I'm glad you did because we think about like the success of Blade Runner, how long it took
Mm-hmm.
for it to actually get a sequel and become a franchise in itself, and how many different stories were inspired by its concept both visually and story wise. But yeah, I think about it. It seems like the grind for science fiction to really become a part of pop culture. It definitely happened in the '80s. You think about
Mm-hmm.
Ridley Scott, how he had already kind of established a franchise with Alien, and Blade Runner was kind of this other great idea that I
Right.
guess like I said, the film industry they liked it, they tried it, but it was a bomb and got abandoned for a long time. But you think
Right.
about it, they had to combine science fiction with a horror genre with Alien,
Right.
and later on
Mm-hmm.
James Cameron used science fiction, with Terminator, and combined it with action and
Right.
elements of horror, and those became two like the biggest franchises. James Cameron later on did the same thing. He took Ridley Scott's Alien story and added the
Right.
element of action, and then in the mid to late '80s you had like science fiction action movies that were like um, it created a really big turnout for people because there was a level of intensity and excitement and terror that you got out of certain you got from these movies and created iconic moments and
It makes
iconic
it more. It
characters
makes
and
it more
actors.
accessible. Like you can have like the out of this world sci-fi concepts, but you've got to, like, to your point, it's like, okay, but if I throw action in there, it's going to be more digestible. And I'm not saying that James Cameron did that on purpose. I think James Cameron is an absolute genius who
Yeah,
ended up giving us probably the most brilliant and amazing sequel maybe in cinema history, because he understood that he couldn't do over what Ridley did with Alien in 79. That was done. It's like, okay, we need to extrapolate. Okay, what would be next in this universe for this character? And he nailed it. He did the
yeah,
same thing with, obviously Terminator was his baby. So extrapolating T2 from the first Terminator film again, and then you watch stuff like The Abyss. The creativity and the brilliance
mm,
is there. I think maybe, and again, this just popped into my head
hard to
because
sorry about that.
no, no, no,
It's
no. Your point about we add a horror element to sci-fi, we add an action element to sci-fi. It just makes it more exciting. So I'm not criticizing that at all because I love all that stuff. I
yeah,
think what might be the block for certain types of cyberpunk, because there have been cyberpunk projects that have come since that just did not resonate with me. Doesn't mean they're inherently bad. It just didn't speak to me. I think what's tough and what Denis Villeneuve Denis Villeneuve and Hampton Fancher, the writers of Blade Runner 2049, nailed was just enough action, because there's plenty of action in the original Blade Runner. But what Blade Runner and Blade Runner 2049 do and don't apologize for and they don't try to skirt around it, is that these are at their core very intensely philosophical films. They're asking existential questions, like you said at the top. What is life? What does it mean to be human? What does it mean to be free? Uh, does the fact that someone was birthed out of a test tube or out of a lab, does that mean they have less rights than you and I, who were born from a human womb? It asks really important questions that you are left think again, if you're a thinker, that you're left thinking about well after the movie is gone. And I think that's another, on top of the fact that it is just a beautifully executed, beautifully crafted film. It asks very important universal questions, because as human beings, we're always asking ourselves, why am I here? What is my purpose? What do I want out of life? Am I who I want to be? Am I who I say I am? Again, all these questions about purpose and goals and values and trying to figure out to discover yourself, to create yourself even more than discovering yourself, to create yourself as you and I are great examples of a couple of guys that are actively creating ourselves. And I think even though people might not think about it at the top of their minds, that's part of why Blade Runner is as beloved, and it just worms its way into your mind, and why it's just never going to go away, because it asks really important questions fundamental to someone's life and life in general.
And even more than that, like the questions are being asked while you're being shown, life. You're being, it's, it takes place in a, like I said, a cyberpunk dystopia in a neo noir. You have these different questions going on, but even more so, you're given a story that makes those questions super relevant, and not just relevant to the audience, but also relevant to all of the characters that are involved in, either the mystery or the mission, or involved in survival. Different everybody's motivated in different ways, and
Right.
um, that's what made Blade Runner so interesting. And honestly, like I said, been watching it like over the weekend and not seeing it for a while. Like I said, I go back and I look at all the other maybe sci-fi or cyberpunk movies, games, or even anime. And one thing that Blade Runner does that the other projects haven't done, this one's actually very organic for what it is. The acting is extremely organic. The replicants, they don't act like machines, and that's what made it so intriguing to me. Is they have to have
Right.
these different tests to kind of prove what they are, and they don't do it by they have I forget what the test is called, but there's a test that
Oh, the Voight Comp test.
Thank you. Yeah, the Voight comp test is really interesting because they have to basically, subject the potential replicant to a series of questions in order to extract an emotional response to expose what they are. Since they're good
Right.
at pretty much hiding their emotions, they're known to be non emphatic, and they can still kind of pretend to convince other people that they care or they're nice or they want to be friends when they already have like an ulterior motive. And so that's what the Blade Runners do, and what the police do is that they try to expose their their artificial identity by detaining them and asking them a series of questions to get them to have a response that's emotional to basically
Well,
show that they're
that's a really great point.
and that's interesting. That's so interesting because
Oh,
none of the other you know movies or shows do that. Ghost in the Shell didn't do it.
right.
Deus Ex Machina from EOS, which in my opinion is the Canadian Blade Runner. It's very good. You don't have things like that. You don't have the Ghost in the Shell. You don't have Ghost in the Shell comes close. They do something different though in terms of like people's memories.
Right.
Because
Yeah. It's
people
it's
have
it's not quite. Yeah.
yeah.
It
And,
sort of
and it's
bumps up
good that
the
they have a contrast, which I appreciate because it
right.
doesn't really make Ghost in the Shell, like an exact like Japanese copy. They do their own thing,
Right.
which is interesting. But the thing is, Blade Runner, it's the original Cyberpunk.
Right.
And it proves it. I feel like it proves it with that because the characters that Decker encounters, and the test that he has to go through in order to, basically do his mission as a Blade Runner. Was so interesting to me. The thing, the level, the depths you have to go through in order to, maybe find, hunt, or, interrogate the replicants is interesting. It's different from anything I've seen from any of the other movies. And their
It
responses to it. You see so many human elements from the replicants. Their
yes.
desire to blend in and survive and not be exposed.
And to just live like this is
Yeah.
the brilliance of Blade Runner is on some level there are no bad guys because on the one hand you relate to Deckard. Deckard has to do his job
Hmm.
because it's the job that he does, and some of these replicants, they're doing things that are bad, but are they doing bad things to do bad things? Are they doing this to hurt people? No, they're doing it because they're basically slaves, and they don't want to be slaves. They want to live. Because they are human. Just because they were born in a tube, or they were manufactured, doesn't make them less human, which is the whole crux of the big question of the story. But the fact that there isn't quote unquote a bad guy, you could look at the replicants as bad guys. You could look at Roy Batty as a bad guy. He does some things, but if you look at it from his point of view, from Zora's point of view, from Pris's point of view, they just want to live, and they don't want to be slaves anymore. And if you're trying to get away from being oppressed, being enslaved, and being killed, you're going to do everything you can to survive. So from their point of view, yeah, of course you're gonna, like Roy returning to Tyrell, and sort of wanting answers. You can't really fault him for doing that, because he wants answers. He wants a fix. He wants to know why. He's also angry. Then add to the top of the fact that all these replicants are incredibly smart. They're incredibly sophisticated, but they're emotionally toddlers because of their limited lifespan. Surprise. Not to spoil that. It doesn't really ruin anything if you haven't seen it. So if you understand the circumstances from where everybody's coming from, so you can sympathize where everybody is, which makes obviously the resolution, which we won't spoil, that much more brilliant, powerful, and beautiful, because it's not about a bad guy. It's about circumstance. It's about, like you said, it's about survival.
To that notion, I do think that in a sense of like dystopian society, like Blade Runner, the corporations create and dictate everything, and
Right.
society pretty much runs around that, because that's pretty much their only lifeline for survival, is to basically
Right.
have humans to try. They're basically in the middle of like they're in a post-war setting. It's a futuristic post-war setting, and they're already past the point where it seems like Earth is greatly polluted. A lot of the animal population has gone extinct.
Right.
So actually, and that's another great point about that, is like animals actually are like a sign as a sign of wealth in that movie, which is really interesting.
Because take for granted cats, dogs, birds, and it's so interesting that it's like, okay, well, if there was what they call in the novel that this movie was based on, they call it World War Terminus, like literally like the last war. Right. And we take bees, birds, dogs totally for granted, and they brilliantly make animals like this luxury item. It's so interesting. It's so smart.
That's the thing about it. Like, it's crazy, because it's like when you think about the replicants and what they're doing, it's like it might be the only sign of rebellion that exists in that world.
Yeah.
And nobody's really fighting back anymore.
Right.
There's, like I said, there's no resistance. All the circumstances that are happening in the world of Blade Runner, or at least just in that future LA, you have a blend of, it's crazy. It's like it's kind of bleak, but at the same time, it's still kind of hope, because there's still life. There's still people living, even though the situation is, it's a much dark and dismal place. There's still people living and trying to survive, and it seems like the society is, like I said, it's kind of cannibalized in a sense, where they have to have like these levels. They have classism, so people who live on the ground, walk around, and all that stuff are seen as like like the lower specimen, or just the lowest class. Right. The society is basically trying to educate people to go out into the frontier. And
they're doing what a lot of empires have done, like back during the British Empire. Yeah. If you were someone who was non-English, like say you were a Scotsman,
Yeah.
you you still weren't respected in the same way English people were respected. So what did the Empire do? The Empire would tell you, "Hey, Scotsman, if you want to be respected like an Englishman, you should become an imperial officer in India. And in India, you'll be treated like an Englishman would be here because you'll be a Scotsman among Indians." And so that's what empires do. Is when people get restless or people there isn't enough work to go around because they don't have free markets. It's a very controlled economy. They just ship people out. They ship people to, again, in the case of the British Empire, they ship them to Australia and India and China and all these different places, because just get them out, because if you don't, they're going to cause a problem. So that whole pitch of off-world sounds like a great adventure, and then we find out from the replicants, well, how much of an adventure could it be to be in the cold vacuum of space doing hard labor, and that's all you do? It's very interesting how they drew from so much history. Again, assuming if you know the history. But yeah, it's so layered, man. God, it's just a beautiful, beautiful piece.
It is. It's so incredible. And yeah, I'm actually watching it, looking at clips as we go, just trying to like get
Sure.
just enjoying that, just for the visuals. I got the captions on, but like everything you mentioned, it really is interesting. And um I'm happy the fact that the franchise has been kind of regenerated. They got their sequel, and they're trying to do the little anime spin-offs and all that.
There's a
Um,
new film being or was in production a few months ago, and I know this because I remember when it dropped. I was on my agent's ass, like, anything. Can I just get me in the background, something? And unfortunately, he didn't get access to any of the. It was, well, however it was cast, however it was produced. Those things only went to a very limited amount of people because he could find nothing. And I believe it was filmed in Serbia or Romania somewhere. I believe you're going to love this because I love her. I adore her. I have watched her since I was a kid. Michelle Yeoh is the lead in it. I don't
yeah.
recall what the premise of it is, but it sounded really, really interesting.
Okay.
What I really love is I love the fact that, because Blade Runner, it uses so much Asian aesthetic,
Yeah,
symbolic
that's right.
culture,
Yeah.
and
It's
obviously the Japanese ran with that. I always thought it was odd, and I even thought it was odd to an extent, even with 2049. I'm like, okay, so it's 50 years in the future in California, which is right now one of the most diverse states in the country. And I didn't see a single Mexican, Filipino, like in terms of like the core cast. I thought that was really, no, for me it was noticeable. And I love this movie. I'm not criticizing the movie. I love it. I adore it. But if I had to say, if I were to criticize it, my only critique would be, how is it we're 50 years in the future in California and everyone's kind of lily white European? I'm not being racist there. I'm just, my point is, I think there was like one African American character, the guy who ran the orphanage. There was it was
yeah,
he Ethiopian. Like there were a couple characters in there.
that's
I
right.
just thought it was so odd that no one in the core cast reflected what a future California will be. And so when I heard that Michelle Yeoh was the lead of this next Blade Runner film, I think is it Blade Runner 2089? I think it's currently
Oh
titled.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, they're doing a
Like, that
time jump.
makes
I heard about that
total
too. Yeah.
sense. That makes, I'm like, how do you miss that? And
Yeah.
so maybe that's a detail that will be corrected in this next film. Again, not
Yeah, that
critiquing
should be
the
really
brilliance of it.
interesting.
It was
Yeah.
just something that I noticed immediately. I'm just like, 2049. Okay, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
not to say that there wouldn't be Caucasoid European people in the future. Of course, there will be. But I just thought
Oh
it was
yeah, yeah.
it just seemed very. I'm like,
Right.
Saw
Yeah,
some
you think of
buildings with
yeah,
Korean writing on them. I'm like, I haven't seen a Korean person. And like the odd by in 50 years, we're going to have people that are mixed Korean, Mexican, Hungarian. They're going to be
right.
Armenian and Japanese. And I was like, where are those people at?
Right,
So
exactly. Yeah, because you think about, I saw like a survey online recently talking about how this generation, there's so many people that are, racially, mixed,
sure,
interracial, babies, made of interracial couples. A lot of,
sure,
Gen Z and Gen Alpha are from, interracial couples, and
sure.
a lot of like pop culture and media is all kind of consumed from the same sources. So we're actually kind of seeing kind of like the beginning of like regular globalization. So
Well, even us as people, man. I mean, let's look at you and me.
yeah, yeah,
You and I have like, okay, we aren't I guess you could say racially mixed people necessarily. I mean, we could probably do a really deep dive on 23andMe at some point. I'm sure we'll find some interesting stuff. But point being, while we might not have parents of different racial backgrounds, you and I have been raised almost our entire lives on a diet of different cultural exposures. We've been
mm,
consuming Japanese
true.
culture and products of Japanese culture, Korean culture, Chinese culture, Eastern European culture, depending on what films you watch and all that. Mexican culture, like that's all there. You look at, and I'm sure we'll touch on this. You and I will review. We recently watched Sukiyaki Western Django, and we've
Mm,
talked about the interplay of westerns with samurai films. Well, you look at something like Sukiyaki Western Django, and you can find the Western American thread. You can find a bit of Mexican. You can certainly see the Japanese influence all over it. The concept of the white gang versus the red gang, the red versus whites. That's the War of the Roses from Shakespeare. There's so many of these things that are intermixing, and so long story short, for people like you and I, though we may not be ourselves racially mixed, culturally, intellectually, philosophically, we are definitely mixed, and it's a sort of beautiful matrix of different cultures and ideas and aesthetics that have come together. And I feel like aesthetically, Blade Runner nails that. It seems like the last thing that they've been able to quite get is okay. Most of your cast and your population should probably reflect that. Now that we're hitting Blade Runner 2089. Okay, guys, we really need
be really
to
interesting.
we need to mix this up a little bit more, or a lot, depending on. For
Yeah,
me, I fantasize about casting these types of things, so it would be no problem for me to just mix it up. But that's my only, I think, criticism. Again, I don't expect that from a movie from 1982 like Blade Runner, but I
hmm,
do expect it from a movie from 2017. Blade Runner
right. Yeah,
2049, and it's a careful dance because you have to, and this is why my industry is working really hard to course correct an historical injustice of not developing talent outside of the sort of lead whites, and it's working really hard on that, and things are changing and things are getting better. It just seemed that they probably went up against, okay, but who's a box office draw? That's who we have to cast if we want to get it made. So it's incumbent upon our industry to build up everyone that they can. And I really appreciate the fact that this next installment of the Blade Runner universe is going to have fucking Michelle Yeoh front and center. I just like, yes, that's absolutely. She's an Oscar winner. She's just brilliant. She's a badass.
she's a badass kung fu star too. She's Hong
Right?
Kong, yeah, one of the
Hong
greats. So
Kong, baby.
yeah, so it's great. It's going to be great to see that. I'm excited not only just for Michelle Yeoh, but just for the progress of the story. Like
Right.
you think about what happened. I think about like uh, the ending for Blade Runner and the things that were kind of being told to Deckard. I forgot his goddamn name. How could
Deckard.
I forget his? Yeah, Deckard. But no, Batty. The things that he
Oh,
said,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
the things that he told to Deckard towards the end of the movie, which is kind of, if you think about the grand scheme of things, is actually very haunting. And you think
Yes.
about how things on the frontier are going versus how they'll be going, like maybe within the future of that, humanity's progress and, how they're actually really doing. That's going to be really interesting to me. And that's always been like that's always been something that's always been very intriguing to me when I watch stuff like Terminator or The Matrix. The survival of the species has always been,
Mhm.
the survival of humanity, and even Halo. Halo's technically kind of has some cyberpunk elements in it, but yeah, that's exciting to me. It's like, oh god,
You might, you know, what you might enjoy. There's this guy. I guess a film critic of sorts that I really, really enjoy. And I don't agree with everything he says. I've got some pretty strong disagreements with him, but
okay,
I think he's really honest. I think he's really studied film. He's a very smart guy. His name is Rob Ager, Ager. His channel is called Collative Learning, Collative Learning, Collative Learning. He did a
okay,
video
all right,
of what he did a video of how he would have done a sequel to Blade Runner. And he came up
mm,
with like 3 or 4 concepts of what he would have done instead of 2049. Not to say that he didn't like 2049, but he felt that there are many corners of the Blade Runner universe which, to your point, are mentioned in that first movie. And you can
yeah,
go in very different directions. He would have done. He said you could do the James Cameron Aliens approach, and the sequel to Blade Runner being Blade Runners with an S, where it's about the team of Blade Runners that are sent at the quote unquote end of Blade Runner to go and pursue certain people and certain characters, and that story being about sort of this quasi-military group of Blade Runners that are on this particular mission. Obviously, they don't necessarily catch those characters, but it's about the process and that journey for those characters. I thought that was brilliant. He came up with another one
yeah,
called Off World, and I'm like,
mm,
where it's literally he going all the things that Roy Batty talks about, all the things
mm,
that led up to that rebellion. Take me
yeah,
there. Take me to the Tannhauser Gate. Take me to the shoulder of Orion. Show me what the fuck happened. Go explore. Get off. You don't have to necessarily retread. Like, isn't that brilliant? Like, if they
as
really
a true
wanted to
fan,
build
yeah,
this
that
out,
would be, oh my god, that would be
right?
so fucking mind blowing to see,
I
man. Oh my god, it's like you
and
hear
then the
it's
last one,
the way he delivered his final lines and how he
right?
made
Oh
that
yeah,
seem so,
right.
there's a reason there's a reason the replicants did what they did. There's a reason where Batty, and Pris, they did what they did for a reason. It's
Right.
like they're trying to get away from something. Not
Right.
just trying to live and find their career. They're trying to get answers. There's a reason, and humanity really needs to, like. That's what I
So
want. Like,
show me that thing. And I just
dude.
again, Rob
Oh my
Ager,
god.
I can't recommend the guy enough.
Oh my
I'm
god.
sure there are people who might find him prickly, and he's quite an opinionated guy, but frankly, so are we. But he's
Yeah.
really worth watching. Just looking up
That's
like
what I
Rob
want. I want
Ager
more.
Blade Runner sequel ideas.
Yeah.
His last one was just called Replicant, and it would literally
Ooh.
just be a story just
Ooh.
following what it's like to be a replicant. Because up
Ooh.
until this point, all we've really seen on screen are replicants running away or that have escaped something and are
Yeah.
either just trying to live their lives, they're just trying to survive, they're just on the run. What we've never actually seen is a replicant in the shit. And so
Yeah.
that was
That
his
part.
idea for the third film.
God.
All 3 of these are the one that I want to see the most is probably Off World. To see the
Yeah.
internal politics, to see what exactly was going on out there that would
Ooh.
cause these folks to risk their lives to come back to Earth seeking
Yeah.
answers would be brilliant. And I hope that, again, I don't need a Marvel extended universe in Blade Runner. In fact, I don't want that at all.
Nah.
I
Nah.
would like, and maybe every 5 to 7 years, a new movie that explores the corners of that. Because here's what you could do
Yeah.
with Off-World, with Blade Runners, you could make movies that are in the exact same aesthetic of the 1982 film, like they brilliantly done with Star Wars. The technology in Star Wars still looks like the first 3 movies or episodes 4 through
Yeah.
6.
Yep.
You could do a super aesthetic film with Off-World, with Blade Runners,
Yeah.
and just have a lot of fun with that. At the same time, sort of
Yeah.
expound on these little things that are just sort of hinted at or just briefly mentioned in this first movie. So I wanted to mention that because I thought you might enjoy his videos on that.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna take a look at it because it sounds like hard fiction, which I really wish we had more of. And in a sense, sometimes I don't know what I'm really asking for because it's like hard
Hard
fiction.
hard science fiction, hard science fiction. You're absolutely right. You might enjoy. There's a book that's going to become a movie. You know Neil Blomkamp, who did
Yeah,
District 9. He did was it Cabby? I can't remember. I can't remember.
Chappie.
What about
I think
yeah,
Chappie,
Chappie.
Chappie
What about
Elysium.
Android?
Yeah,
He does almost exclusively hard sci-fi, and there's a
yeah,
movie. There's a book called oh damn it, Blind Sight. Blind Sight is a movie about a deep space crew, and one of the crew is a vampire.
oh man,
And
whoa,
his spin-off is supposed to be just about the vampire and how like he gets down to this is how he takes the vampire myth and makes it hard science fiction. He basically says part of the reason why vampires don't like crucifixes isn't because of their beliefs. It's because they're at least in his story, they're this super apex predator that exists outside the cities. And they exist outside the cities because they can't be around right angles. In nature, there are no right angles. So, what is a crucifix? It's for right angles. So, when you show a vampire a crucifix, it screws with their cognition. And so, like, he's put all this thought into basically, okay, we're in some future time on Earth, and these vampires kind of come back, and the humans have to figure out a way to stop them because they're these super smart, super apex predators that aren't affected by holy water, aren't affected by these things, but are somehow affected by right angles. I really, really hope he makes this movie. Only reason I know about this is he was a guest on like the Joe Rogan show like a few years back, and I remember him talking about this. I'm like, God, if anybody in Hollywood has any brains, they should be throwing money at this dude to make this film because it's brilliant. But yeah, to your point on hard science fiction, we need more of it. You're absolutely right.
honestly, like I would say this isn't really a big deal. I know, like in some cases, like hard science fiction could actually be better than just survival horror. You think like The Last of Us and stuff, and or The
Sure.
Walking Dead. It kind of took it, it went into one direction of like post-apocalyptic, human survival,
Right.
and it did what it did, to its natural effect. There's also there are a lot of science fiction stories that are out there that really are about the human experience,
Right.
and you have to have really interesting settings to diverse and dynamic settings to really, show the relativity between, um, people in our time versus people in another time, be it the past or the future, in order for it to have that type of relativity. And with science fiction, you really just do it in the future. But I think with hard fiction, you're also doing things that are just kind of beyond the normal comprehension, and to actually be able to have characters or a cast of some sort actually find ways to identify and resolve issues is really interesting. Dune, is another
Yeah.
example of
No.
like
Right. With
it's getting its time to shine with hard fiction, and that's
yes.
people are really getting into that, and it's just it's time now. Same with Blade Runner. Blade Runner,
Right. Well, yeah.
it's their time.
I think the industry has figured out that audiences are a lot more sophisticated and a lot smarter than maybe they had historically been given credit for. You look at
Yeah,
just the reappreciation, the reevaluation of Blade Runner, the success and reevaluation and appreciation for Blade Runner 2049, the incredible success of the new Dune films, uh, all of that. I think it's all leading in a good direction, and maybe as a result of that, Neil Blomkamp will get to do his hard science fiction vampire film because the guy is brilliant. I think that
yeah, I
he
agree.
needs more opportunities because he really is great. And
Yeah, they should. I don't understand. I don't remember what the reason was behind. I guess I don't know if it was Fox or whatever, but yeah, at some point, yeah, he had concept drawings up for for an Alien movie.
He worked for he didn't have just concept drawings, man. He worked for 2 years to do something called
Yeah.
Alien 5 that would have picked up from the end of Aliens, that I don't know how they were going, if they were retconning, or I'm not sure how that was going to work. But every single person that I knew that is a big Aliens fan that grew up with those films, we were just on fire for it, and just really, like you said, the concept drawings, all of the designs. I mean, it was really, really brilliant, and I was shocked when I heard that Fox shelved it, and I was in a way kind of hurt, because I felt like this was maybe the last opportunity to give another go round, or a final send off to Sigourney Weaver and Michael Biehn. Like, it was good. They were going to bring those characters back, and I was just so bummed, because I was bummed because I love those characters. I think that there's a part of us that kind of wanted to see what would have happened, because I love Alien 3. I love the way the trilogy ended. I think it was Shakespearean as fuck.
Very, yeah.
It was great. I know a lot of people didn't like what they did there, but I appreciated it. But I also think that there was room to, like, okay, if you didn't have Alien 3 and Alien Resurrection, what if you just kept going after Aliens in a more triumphant direction? That would have been Alien 5, and I would have liked to have seen it. Because here's the thing. The studios own this franchise, and they're going to be able to refresh it as much as they want forever. We weren't always going to get the opportunity to get a last really cool send-off from the glory that is 1986's Aliens, and I think that that's what Neil Blomkamp was going to give us. Unfortunately, we didn't get it, and that was that. But to, I guess, close it out here, we at least have the peace of mind to know that the Blade Runner franchise is in good hands, that whatever 2089 is going to be, we have Michelle Yeoh. I'm in for it. Sign me up, and I'm excited, and I was really happy to talk with you in particular about this movie, because again, this is where it all started. So much of the anime we love, so much of the just aesthetic that we love. Yeah. It doesn't, without this film, it does not exist.
Yeah, exactly. And it, like I said, it's great to come back and revisit this legendary production, which really did spawn, and inspire a whole lot of other visionary, creators, be it writers, be it animators, be it cinematographers. There's so many people that were directly inspired by Blade Runner, and it really does show, and it really does hold up, like,
so many
over 40 years, we're getting so many different things that are based off of Blade Runner, and the culture that it created, it really did create a great, genre within science fiction that I think is not only it's intriguing to watch, but it's also, very thought provoking, and is a very human and emphatic experience that we should always, appreciate, our humanity, and, be grateful for the fact that, hopefully years in the future, these stories will inspire us to hopefully have, better, work towards a better tomorrow. I think that's what science fiction is really all about, showing us who we could be when we do our best, or also who we could be if we may not do our best, what would happen. So, yeah.
Well said, man. Yeah. Well said. Couldn't agree more. Thanks for doing this one with me. I couldn't have done this with anybody else.
I wish we could do a 2-part so we could actually just do like a deeper dive, but it's all good. It's
we can revisit this one as much as we want. If you decide you've got something else, we can we can even at some point. There's like 4 versions of this movie. There's the theatrical cut. There's a director's cut, which isn't really a director's cut, because the true director's cut is the final cut. There's also a European cut. There used to be a 5 DVD set of, and I don't know what the 5th version is, but there was a 5-disc DVD set of the different cuts of this movie, all of which had different footage that never made it into the 2 main versions, either the final cut or the theatrical cut. But we'll cut it there, and you and I can, we can go do some digging, and maybe we'll revisit this down the line, because it would be fun. But guys, if you've enjoyed what we've done, if there's anything that we've missed on Blade Runner, if there's a version of Blade Runner that maybe we should take a crack at, let us know down in the comments. Let us know, is there a a Blade Runner spinoff or a film that was heavily influenced by that we didn't mention, maybe we don't know about that we should check out, please down in the comments. And again, if you've been hanging with us, please like, subscribe, share, help us build the channel so we can do more cool ass stuff. But until then, we'll see you guys next time. Thanks again.
Thank you guys. Thank you. Thank you.